I think it's not looking at the same things everyone else is looking at, and making myself look at art or cinema or whatever it may be that isn't presented to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Photo Pros Weekly. I'm Brandon Heiss. I'm here again with Olivia Tuttle, and this week we're going to take a deep dive with Lindsay Adler. Now, Lindsay is a fashion and beauty photographer based out of New York City. Welcome, Lindsay. How are you?
Good. How are you guys? I miss you both.
I miss you too. We'll see each other soon enough, though, I hope.
I know, right?
Lindsay, we're going to jump right in today. And if you could, for the people that maybe have been living under a rock for the past 10, 15 years, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us kind of what kind of work you do and, how that's kind of changed over the past couple of years.
Sure. So the best way to describe me is a creator and an educator. Like, those are the two things that I live for all the time. And so I am constantly creating, whether that's fashion editorials, or maybe it's photo tutorials, or maybe it's just a fine art nude photograph, or maybe it's a book. Like, I'm just constantly creating and sharing, and like that's what I do. That's what I live for. So I live in New York, and what I make my photographic living off of is usually in the realm of beauty and fashion photography. So I have a lot of skincare clients, and foundation and fake eyelashes and all that kind of stuff. But really, what I get hired for is my style. I have a very clean, bold graphic style, and I photograph women in a way that is both strong and elegant. So what that means is I get hired also to shoot celebrities, or I photograph for Haagen-Dazs. It's anytime my style is applicable, that's when they hire me.
Okay, so you'll do a Haagen-Dazs, a commercial type shoot if they want some kind of beauty and fashion element, or...
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you look at my portfolio, you'll see I use like a lot of contrast, a lot of pop, really graphic compositions, bright saturated colors, and so that fits in perfectly with the advertising world. So sometimes something that's totally outside my realm will reach out to me. So like the Haagen-Dazs example was a big campaign for Haagen-Dazs Shanghai, and so it's a girl surrounded by flowers, and then she's holding a moon pie.
Wow.
So like, so it is fashion and beauty, but it's really when you get to a certain place where you have a recognizable style, if people want that look, they hire you to do it regardless of what the subject matter is.
Sure. Makes total sense. Now, have you always done beauty and fashion, or has that always been your passion? Or where did you start? I mean, as a beginning photographer, one, how many years ago was that? And then two, without giving your age away, you don't need to say anything like that, even though you're like 30.
I used to be like so excited to tell people how old I was, and now I'm like almost on that cusp of no, I have no problem with that. So I've officially had a business for 20 years,
Wow.
Like 20 full years. But related to the age thing, I started when I was in high school. And so in high school, I was one of those people, I knew I wanted to be a photographer. I mean, 1,000% by the time I was 15, but probably when I was like 12 or 13, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And so my mom was actually my partner in my first business. And I remember we went down to the courthouse and we filled out the paperwork. And so my first business, which I ran for like 8 to 10 years, was purely portrait weddings, like small town portrait studio.
Sure.
After college, I spent 2 years where I had a storefront in this cute little small town. It was Wego, New York is where I grew up. And I photographed anything that came my way. So I photographed, like, I've done, you name it,
Everything.
I've done it. I photographed anniversary parties and weddings, engagement sessions, maternity. I photographed newborns. I photographed family. Like, I did all of that along the way, trying to figure out what my like actual calling and voice was. But I did go to college for photography, but I paid my way through from my photo business I started in high school. So like, that's kind of my unique story for how I experienced becoming a professional.
Gotcha. So throughout that process of trying all those different types of photography, you obviously found your passion with fashion and beauty. What did you decide? No way, no how, never in a million years do I want to photograph this or that again? Or was
babies?
babies?
Babies. Oh my gosh. So like I never grew up. My sister was only 2 years younger than me, so I never actually grew up around babies or children. I don't have any, never had that experience of like the little cousin or anything. And so I remember when I was photographing babies and they would just poop neon colors
Oh yeah.
everywhere. And like I had never been around this, so me it was just like horrifying. I remember the first time it happened, and like now like 3 feet behind on my background, it's just like it looks like someone shot with a
It's
paintball.
the new
It's
style
just
of
like horrifying.
background. It's the baby
Hmm.
edition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
like the
like that
Jackson
color.
Pollock of
Yeah,
poo.
babyshitbackgrounds.com. Actually,
Exactly.
grab that
It's so
URL
awful.
before anybody listening.
Yeah.
Babyshitbackgrounds.com.
I like this.
So
Listen, knowing you, you'd make it happen.
so babies are a no-go. Let me ask you this. We're great friends. I have another child. What's the cost? There's got to be a cost sometime.
Yeah, but here's the thing: there's always a friend discount. Like you're a friend, so like I can
All
suffer.
right. How
And
about
like
this then?
you and if your kids poop everywhere, which I don't think they're at that point, but you have to take care of it. When they're your client, you have to. And it's just like
That's right. That's right. All right. So somebody
totally. I
calls
mean,
you out of the blue asking for no friend, no family.
no friend, no family. I mean, this is this gonna sound snotty? I mean, I know
No,
my number.
my wedding
$1
photography
million.
number is $10,000 because I do not want to show up, and it's got to be worth my time,
Okay,
right?
yeah. So that's minus 10.
Yeah.
Like I would do it for 10,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's realistic.
I just because here's the thing. But here's the thing too is I if there's ever a time, and this is being like real business stuff, if there's ever a time that I'm asked to shoot something that either I'm not comfortable with or maybe it's not my expertise, the answer, as you're saying here, is always, what number would make you happy enough to want to shoot it. But from there, it's also what number is high enough that I could hire other experts to be on set with me because maybe they want baby photography in my style, but I don't know how to work with babies.
Sure.
So I would hire someone who's maybe an expert baby photographer poser. I still do the creative direction, but I'm using them to help me with the posing and the wrangling and stuff like that. So like when I photographed professional athletes before, I don't particularly have a wide range of knowledge about sports. And by wide range, I mean it's non-existent. So I would hire assistants on set that basically their job is they know a lot and they can make the client feel important.
Sure.
So their job is really like their job is to take care of that client, but not fan over them, but make sure that they feel elevated because I have no idea who they
Yeah.
are. Like that
Yeah.
kind of
No, you bring up a great point. Yeah.
How do you find those assistants or experts?
I mean, nowadays in social media, as somebody always knows someone
Yeah.
that they can recommend. Like you have a huge network, and then obviously you meet the person beforehand to make sure they're not creepy. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's an expert for everything you can imagine. Like in New York, there's somebody that specializes in birds for set photography. They bring birds. That's what they do. It's specifically for photography. And they have like I did a shoot with this. They had their main bird and then they had like a backup bird in case the main bird wasn't feeling up to this job.
Only in New
We
York.
did.
Only in New York do you have an expert for something so
Bird photo
niche
shoots.
like bird photo shoots. I'm sure they have
Hmm.
somebody for elephant photo shoots and giraffe photo shoots as well.
They do. There was some guy back, like, there was a publication I used to work with like probably 10, 12 years ago. And I remember one time a photo shoot shows up and there's a bear in the photos. And I was like, oh, they photoshopped it. But I'm like, I don't know, that's real good. And then I checked. The photographer came from money and like legit hired someone with a bear for a photo shoot.
Wow.
So like you want it, it's out there. It's just
It's
maybe not the best way to spend your money, but okay.
well, there's people spending a lot more money on a lot.
Worse.
Yeah.
Totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
So, Lindsay, let's talk a little bit about your inspiration. You've got a pretty unique style, and I think you've really kind of come into that style over the past, God, I would say even 5-10 years, that I've known you. Is there anything new that's inspiring you? I mean, or what really drives you and kind of inspires you in your work that you're putting out there today?
Oh, there's so many things I want to say because I think the biggest problem that photographers have with being inspired is they look at the same photos and same stuff that everyone else does. We're all looking at the same stuff, so everything is going to feel derivative.
Right.
And so I'm trying to look at as many different things as possible. For example, there's an illustrator that I really love. Follow her on Instagram. Her name's Malika Farv, or Favre, but I think it's Malika Farv. She's fantastic, and her images look like if my photos were illustration.
Hmm.
And so like I'll look at her for inspiration of different compositions or different ways to play with color and texture, like graphic textures and things like that. And then movies. So I was not a movie buff growing up whatsoever. I still am not. Like I'm really bad. Like my significant other, he can tell you like every movie, every person who played in it, like to like 10 people
Yeah.
down is crazy. My brain isn't wired like that. So he's been introducing me to a lot of old films that I had never seen before. And I'm sitting there and I'm just drooling. This one's not even old. One that I watched a couple weeks ago. It's called Hero, and it's a foreign film. It's Chinese. I mean, the plot is Chinese, so I'm assuming it's a Chinese foreign film. Holy crap, it was stunning. Without giving anything away, basically someone's telling a story, but they tell it in three different ways, and each time it's a different color.
Well, that's cool.
So the first time they tell the story, the whole thing is red. Every set, every prop, the makeup, everything. And it's an elaborate story. And then the second time it's blue. And then the third time it's green and white. And it was just mind blowing. So I think it's not looking at the same things everyone else is looking at, and making myself look at art or cinema or whatever it may be that isn't presented to me
Sure. Different
on a platter.
different types of media beyond photography is I think that's great feedback, and it's very outside the box thinking. A lot of people say, "Oh, I want to have a look like Annie Leibovitz, or I want to have a look like Lindsay Adler, or Joel Grimes, something like that." But looking into different places, that's really unique. So, but I have to ask, there's got to be some photographers that you absolutely drool over as well.
1,000%. They're the photographers where I'm sure you have this feeling, or maybe you don't. This could be just me, where you admire their work, but it also makes you a little unhappy because you're like, oh god, it's so good. What the hell? Like it's like painful. So one photographer, and I have their book right here, is Christian Schuler. Christian Schuler, German photographer. My significant other got me the book for Christmas a couple years ago because it's like hard to find. His work is incredible. It's colorful, it's fairy tale, but it's elegant. It's big sets and amazing moving fabric and bright colors. I'd put him in the realm of it's like Tim Walker, but with super saturated poppy colors. And his wife is the one who does all of the clothing design, and she makes custom dreamy pieces. He's amazing. Then there's a photographer from the 1950s and 60s that's a female photographer, and I think she often gets overlooked. Her name is Lillian Bassman. And there's a whole section of my work that once you see her work, you'll know exactly where that came from. It's high contrast black and white, really blown out shadows. It's often a little bit of motion blur. It's strong and elegant. It's timeless, but it has a lot of experimentation to it. Like I could see her work in an editorial in a magazine today and think it's like edgy, pushing the envelope today, but she's from like 50s and 60s. And she's absolutely incredible. And then, yeah, she's just a dream. And then after that, I mean, there's obviously like other contemporary and current photographers that I love and admire. There's a Norwegian photographer named Solveig Sundsbo, and the reason I like his work is because I think if you look at his work, I've obviously gotten inspiration there because he's never sick of playing and experimenting. Like I think he's an older gentleman now, and like his work is just as playful and pushing the envelope as ever. He'll play with lasers one day. He'll play with gels one day. He'll play with crazy fog backlit trees one day. Like he's just always giving me
Always
something new to be
pushing
inspired
himself.
by.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what a lot of people need. I think people get complacent with their work, and they say, "Well, I've got a group of clients that appreciate my work and that sort of thing," but they're kind of sitting there treading waters, and I think
Totally.
pushing those boundaries is really going to make you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is actually a good thing, because then it allows you to learn and allows you to grow, right? So
It would do the uncomfortable days on unpaid days, on days where you're playing around, and then who cares if it was terrible?
yeah.
It's totally fine.
So how often do you play around? I mean, out of every month, how many days are you playing around?
At least 2 days a month. Like 2 days are what I commit myself to. Obviously pandemic meant less days for a very long time. And then when I could go back to shooting, it was more days because I was really excited. But usually it's 2 days where, and they're often back to back. And the reason being is we'll just gather a ton of ideas and it's like, let's see how much we can get done in 2 days and what we can try. And so we're usually in the studio. We arrive around 8:30 in the morning and we leave around 7 at night for 2 days in a row, and we just create all day. And usually I have two models so that one's getting the makeup done, the other's being shot, and then they switch, and it's just like just trying things.
That's what I was going to
And
ask. It's still full stylized, like you normally would for a paid shoot. That's usually, I've been to one of your shoots. It's pretty impressive to be a fly on the wall. You've got it's honestly, it reminds me, I've been to a few feature film sets as well, and it's on a smaller scale. Your studio reminded me of that. You've got a lot of people there. That was one thing that kind of surprised me, at least, and it maybe was on a random day, but I think you probably had 8 or 9 people there. And then you're nodding your head. So yeah, that's about average.
Totally
but
normal.
like, a feature film, you've got probably close to 100 people, before COVID, obviously, 100 people on set, and they all have a little job, and I think that's what I noticed about Lindsay's set too, is everybody's doing something, and it's kind of like organized chaos. And when Lindsay's not shooting, it's like little ants running around. They all have their own job. They're here to do A, B, and C. And then Lindsay's ready. She pulls her camera up, and poof, they're all off to the side, and it's quiet. And it's like, that kind of reminds me of like, what you see on a feature film set is just this craziness, but it's very organized. And I think, the only people that can make sense of it are the people that live that on a daily basis.
Totally. Because I'm thinking about it. So like it's hair and makeup. Pre-COVID, one of them would probably have an assistant. So let's say like 3. Okay. Then it'd be wardrobe, and wardrobe always has an assistant. Then it's models, but there's usually 2. Then there's me. And then it depends on if it's a beauty shoot, there might be a manicurist. Depends. Then I usually have my first assistant. Then I usually have a second assistant and an intern. So like
12
you got
people.
12.
Yeah.
12's your high point, and
yeah, but it gets even, well, on commercial days, like paid days, it gets more intense than that because everyone has an assistant. And then there's going to be a PA, so somebody who's kind of like organizing the day. And then there's going to be the client. And then sometimes it's like there's a client, but there's actually an ad agency. So the ad agency is my client, but then their client. And then like there's a digital tech. And then so I've had sets with 20, 22 people on it or something like that.
Totally.
Full house.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Now
what's the skim down version? I mean, hopefully, we'll be getting out of this, and we are getting out of this right now, I think. But, when you had to do shoots, in the springtime, spring going into summer, how many people are you generally having on set?
Well, so this is like a humble brag, but so part of the deal is last September, during all of this, I bought a studio, and part of the reason I bought it is because it was 3.5 times larger than my last one. And so it makes social distancing much, 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 much easier. And so that was part of my motivation. But we did a lot of any of the things that actually started to come to fruition and be paid jobs last summer. We tried to make it outdoor shoots, and we would do almost everything outdoors. But it would be, in the pared down version, one person for hair and makeup, one person for wardrobe, no assistant. And then me, I would have myself and then 2 people. So like you can get it to a team of 5 if you have to.
Sure. Well, anything is possible. Well, that's very interesting though, that how you've adapted. But I'm sure you're missing that large group. I mean, I'm sure like when you have that 15 to 20 people on a set, you're I don't know. It's like you're an athlete and you've got a crowd of people watching you. You know what I mean? You feel
I
like
do.
that need to perform at the highest level. And I'm not to say that you can't do that with a small group, but it's like it kind of motivates you a little bit.
No, I've never actually had this brought up in conversation, so I actually think that it's a fun topic, but it's it's great because you're this captain of the ship. Like you're moving everybody in one direction, and it's like you've it's the closest that you as a photographer get to feeling important.
Even though
But
you are the most important person, because if they're walking out of there with nothing good,
Yeah,
no,
their job
totally.
was for nothing.
It's good because you get to like you're corralling people and you're and it's that balance of like motivating and inspiring, but also keeping people in line and like focused and then like balancing, okay, this is taking too much time, but I know you want to do a good job. It's all of that. Um, I really enjoy it, and not as an insult to me, but I'm not much of a socializer in my free time. Like I'm not, I'm not like 2 nights a week out to dinner and drinks with friends, even before COVID. It's not really my jam. But at my studio, my hair, makeup, wardrobe, like they're my friends. It's you're hanging out with your friends, making art, but also making money, and it's such a cool life and
yeah.
existence. Like it's really unique. It's
Well,
awesome.
that's cool. No, and I could tell that rapport that you had with your hair and makeup artists, on that set. So very cool. So let's shift gears a little bit. You mentioned that you're a creator and you're also an educator, and obviously the last over a year has that education, at least through the forms of like trade shows and things like that, has been minimized.
Yeah.
Um, I talk to a lot of people that are kind of happy that happened. I mean, everybody's trying to find a silver lining from the pandemic, right? And does that bring you kind of like any sort of, I don't know, I don't even know the right word, but just like relief that you can catch your breath from such an aggressive schedule? Or do you feel the opposite? Like you were so involved. I mean, you were at like the Miller's booth and then the Canon booth, and then you're like doing your keynote and you're always hopping around. Um, do you miss that? I guess that's my roundabout way of asking that question.
Um, if I can take this several different directions because the answers change depending on when during this experience you ask me. Because in the very beginning, I was like, well, the very, very beginning, it was devastating because it was like 3 days, 15 things just disappeared in 3 days, and it was like, gut punch. Then for a while, I was feeling good about it because like I'm 35 years old and I don't know how to cook. And so I like learned to cook. Like talking basics, but I'm like, okay, like life skills or being an adult, okay, and I like did some basic gardening and stuff like that. And so like that felt good. And then when we got into late last year, it was definitely a self-esteem downer. Because I think when you produce the amount and the level and the frequency that I do, you can't help but get your self-esteem kind of wrapped up in it. And so not even, I guess even self-esteem is not necessarily the right word. It's like your identity. Like this is who I am. This is what I do. Now that part's gone. So end of last year was definitely like, okay, now what? And how do I do this differently? And so like it's kind of been up and down. And this past month I finally have paid client work coming back. I mean, like I certainly had some, right? But like now I'm actually busy, and it's that feeling of busyness that's actually more comfortable than the feeling of rest and
Right.
quiet.
Right. Yeah. No. And it's actually I'm sure your mind is where a lot of people who are also getting busy. You just hope it lasts, right? We just hope that we can return to normalcy and we're slammed. Like wedding photographers are shooting 3 weddings a week because there's all the missed
Mm-hmm.
out weddings from 2020, and I'm sure a lot of commercial, um, projects were postponed from 2020, and so that's kind of coming over to a 2021. So, but yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, and I'm glad that you're getting busy and you're starting to get back. Now, do you have any shows that you're going to be at, or any workshops that you're planning on, or too soon to?
Yeah, so I literally just this morning emailed Robert, Robert,
Yep.
my employee, about proposing some dates for the workshops I had scheduled for myself to be revisited in like 3 months, something like that. Because actually, I know that this will be at a different time, but they opened up vaccines for my age and older today in New York, so it's starting to be a little bit more like we're moving towards the light at the end of
Sure.
the tunnel and not in the dying
Yeah.
way. So,
Thank God.
so that'll be in like 2-3 months. I'll start trying some, and I'm just gonna try one or two first just to see how it goes. And on a separate note, this is not at all getting political, but as you know, some people are very strict about masks and some people not so much. But part of my issue is when I work with modeling agencies, I have to sign a document that says that everyone will wear one at all times, or the model will get up and leave. And so like I have different sorts of responsibilities, and this will continue for a long time. So I've got those in a couple months, and then I am scheduled for WPPI. So that's gonna be, I believe, my
And
first
that's in
real one
August
back, and that's
in
August.
Vegas, right? So
Yeah,
get
which
nice and hot.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll at least sweat some weight off, and COVID weight.
Well, at least the pools will be open this year. They're never open when we go in March usually. Or they're just like scrubbing them
Oh,
clean and they're like opening like 2 weeks later, right?
That's surprising for
yeah, no,
Vegas.
It's
but it's never like warm. It's never warm
yeah,
when we go.
it's nice. Trust me, it's nice to get away from like a New York and Ohio here, but it's not pool ready.
Yeah.
Like it's still in like the mid 60s.
Well, we'll probably be hosting events in the
Yeah.
pool in August.
Yeah, let's do photo shoots in the pools and
Well, because they used to have Photoshop World
exactly,
in August.
and that's when the pools were open.
So like it's totally doable. You just don't volunteer to shoot outside.
Exactly.
That's it.
Just don't be
Indoors
that
is all fine.
person.
Yeah. The photo walks will be
I did,
quick.
no, I did one year where I got real excited. Like I hooked up with a vintage car person. They brought a car over to the parking lot, and I had people dressed up in vintage clothing, and like I just remember I had my mascara just dripping down my face. That was like, I don't know, probably like 7, 8, no, longer. Ugh, this was like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Photoshop World, and I was like, okay, indoors only. It's fine though. I'm looking forward to it.
We are too.
It'll be interesting though, because I've always been a hugger. So
I know.
now what?
Lots of
Like when you just
elbow
dab elbows. Yeah.
elbow bumps and fist bumps and
I think I should just like keep little stickers that says something like a hug, and then like put stickers on people. So
there
there
you go. I'm sure that's
Something.
a nice business idea. I'm sure somebody will do that. Notes of affection that you can pass out,
Yeah, something like I can't really hug you,
Yeah,
but
I missed you.
I like
I
you.
like you.
Lindsay, we're going to ask you a question and kind of put you on the spot here a little bit. Something we ask a lot of the people we talk with, and it happens to do with what's the most stressful moment you've ever had on a photo shoot? A point where you're literally, I don't know if it's like you had to shut the shoot down, if it's just you're terrified, something
Yeah.
that happened on a shoot that you just, freaked out and,
Well, okay, so I got two.
okay. We can hear from both. I'm sure
Okay.
people would want to hear
Yeah,
more than one.
I want to hear them both.
So the first one was a lot longer ago, and it was when I was transitioning from upstate New York to New York City. So I had a professional model come up to upstate New York, and we were shooting, and we were shooting in a waterfall. And I was like, let's take advantage of what we have here. And it was a small waterfall, but still really pretty. And I had a wide angle lens that I took off and set down, and my makeup artist backed up and knocked my only other lens down the waterfall. And it was the Canon 16 to 35, the original one, the Mark 1, and it just tumbled down rocks all the way down. But the problem was I had one other lens. So I had a 50 and then that wide angle. So, okay, so I got a 50 for the
Make it
rest of the
work.
day. But the other problem was I had no money at that time. So like, that is a huge
Yeah.
freaking deal. Like
It's
that
like a
was like,
$1,200 lens, right? 1,500.
I don't
That's a lot of
remember what
money
it
for
was at
somebody
that
that just,
time.
is just getting started too.
Oh yeah, like it was the only L glass I had owned at the time because I had an 85 1.8 and I had,
Yeah.
like, and
And your 50 was, I'm sure,
so
like a
there's that.
1.8, like the nifty 50 that sold for like
Yeah,
120
exactly.
bucks.
Yeah. It was all the cheap one. The reason I had gotten that lens was because I was doing
Yep.
weddings. And so I was doing a lot of the wide shots at the wedding. So that was like one that I
Sure.
had gotten. And I had other, non-L lenses. So that one was traumatizing because it's like the rest of the shoot, my money,
That's all you're
just
thinking
like
My
about.
that.
makeup artist is fired.
Oh my gosh. And like the thing is he just was totally oblivious
Oh.
to it. And I'm trying not to be mean, but I'm like wanted to kill him, but it was fine. So that one was just much longer ago, but more traumatic because I was starting off. Another one that was pretty bad was maybe this was like 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. I was shooting and I had an we were shooting on a rooftop, right? And this is like low budget stuff, but it was still like a Grammy award winning performer that I was shooting, and we're shooting on a rooftop, and we shot, and I filled up my card and I passed it to the intern at the time, and then I went and moved on, shot it. Long story short, somehow she lost the card, and that was, I mean, it was a full card of all we had done that day. Like I got the second half of the day and then trying to explain that to other people. But when we came downstairs to go back stuff up, she's like, "Oh, where is that?" And we just we never found it.
Gosh.
Like it was
That
So
is
the whole
traumatizing.
terrifying.
shoot was
But
gone?
the entire
Oh,
first half
wow.
of the day,
And do you
it
just
was
tell
awful.
the client that, that first half basically sucked and the model looked terrible and,
I lied and said it was a corrupted card.
I mean, it disappeared, so it was corrupted.
Very corrupt.
That was a corrupt.
I just said the tech was corrupted before we had an opportunity to back it up. I mean, obviously I learned my lesson, but there were when I did that, it wasn't a dual card slot situation. Like it was before that was a
Sure.
thing. So, but yeah, don't pass your cards to the interns. You keep
Yeah,
that in
you
your
got
pocket. and
always
you
have
want
front pockets on the pair of pants you're wearing, or
Yeah, with the little thing. But I like overall, I mean, there's always like little stressful things, but I don't like I never particularly had horrible because I have other little stories. Like I was directing a music video in Istanbul and we were shooting a place we weren't supposed to. And so like the Turkish police come over and are like asking for my permit and like yelling and we're like, "Oh, let me go find it." And then just never went back. Like there's stories like that, but
That's
um
awesome.
yeah, nothing too terrible. Like average terrible.
Awesome.
Yeah, I often get chased down by the Turkish police.
I really did though. Like I was like, "Oh, let me just go see that." We really did. We went and just didn't go back to that
Wow.
place.
All right, so let's opposite of that. Your proudest photograph maybe you've ever done, or photo shoot rather. It may not be an individual photo.
I mean, I definitely think that is somewhat a trick question in that it kind of depends on like, okay, there's images that I'm most proud of. That's one answer. Then like, when my grandmother, my dad's mother, she hated getting her photo taken. And shortly before she passed, I think she knew she was going to die. She let me take a handful of photos, which became really important to our family. So she trusted me enough and knew what was going to happen that she let me do that. So that was a proud moment. And then like this week, I photographed the original Wonder Woman, Linda Carter. And that was proud because I was really proud of that because she reached out to me and said like, "I love your work. I love everything you do." And like, she trusted me. She said, "I want you to do what you want. You decide the concepts, you decide the clothes, the lighting, the whatever, like just make art and involve me." And so like that felt great. And she said she hadn't looked forward to a photo shoot pretty much ever in her entire life. And it was like, I get to be the photo shoot you look up to. Like, that was really great. So there's different things. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, it's been a quick, I don't know, 40 minutes or so. We're going to wrap things up, and I want to know where people can find you and your work.
Sure. So I update all the time on Instagram. Like, I mean, unless I'm crazy busy, it's like 5 days a week. So it's Lindsay Adler _photo. And then my educational content is on learnwithlindsay.com. And I've got like endless tutorials about everything you can imagine there. And then if you just want free and fun tutorials, if you check me out on YouTube, if you just search my name, I'll come up. And I've got lighting and posing and fashion shoots and everything. I produce all the time because I enjoy it.
When she says a diverse amount of stuff, like it's everything. Like Lindsay does not surprise me. She always has something unique and new. And this is not new Lindsay. Like Lindsay has always been this way. I remember back in the Creative Live days, which I know we're dating ourselves a little bit, but Creative Live was online education, kind of pre-YouTube, and it was paid. It was free if you watched it live, and then you paid for it if you wanted to own the workshop, if you will.
And they're still around.
They've kind of diversified, and
minimal.
Yeah, they literally had photographers 3 or 4 days a week, and it's constant. And I felt like I always was shipping gear for photographers to use out to Seattle, and there was something coming back. Like it was like the amount of stuff coming and going was nonstop. And finally, we just told Creative Live, just keep the gear because somebody's going to use it. Anyway, long story short, Lindsay was on Creative Live for, I don't know, I may be exaggerating, but the 10th time. And I'm like, what is Lindsay going to talk about this time? And it was Lindsay's class on photographing skin. And I was like, yep, pretty damn important. And leave it to Lindsay to, come up with that title. I mean, it's so broad yet so specific. I don't know. It was such an interesting thing. And I'm like, Lindsay decides to talk about skin. So credit to you, Lindsay. You're always doing something new. Always, creating content, which we all love. And I know the people listening and watching today love that as well. So with that said, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit the subscribe button below on YouTube if that's where you're watching. And if you're listening on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you subscribe there. We'll see you next week.